ago, I had the life-changing experience of being on the survival television show Alone Australia. For those of you who don't know the show, 10 of us were dropped in different locations in Lutruwita, Tasmania, in the middle of winter. All we had were 10 basic survival items and a heap of camera gear to self-document our survival journey. The aim was to survive as long as possible with no help, no film crew, and absolutely no idea how anyone else was doing. We were totally and utterly alone. I had to find my own shelter and keep myself warm on those long, cold winter nights in the middle of nowhere. After spending weeks completely alone, I had a fair amount of time to think about things. And here's the surprising thing. I came to realise that despite what we're taught, resilience isn't about being tough. Resilience isn't about grit or digging deep or being stoic. True resilience is about human connection. Resilience comes from our support networks. It's the strength we borrow from the people around us, the people who catch us when we fall, the people we have a good laugh with or even a cry. And to break this down, I'm going to go right back to when I was 17 years old. At 17, I joined the Royal Australian Navy. Basic training is kind of like what you see in the movies. Lots of running, push-ups, getting yelled at, and a heap of polishing your boots. It was physically and mentally exhausting, and the sleep deprivation was brutal. One night, after drifting off to sleep, perhaps 2 hours later, I was woken by screaming and metal bin lids being smashed together. Our squad leaders screamed, "Get up, get up, get up." We quickly jumped out of bed, put our clothes on, and ran out to the parade ground to see what was going on. There we were in the middle of winter, dead of night. The winter rain felt like it was piercing my cheek. Our task was an arduous pack run through the rain and mud, all the while carrying a massive waterlogged ship's rope over our shoulder. Off we set. I could hear my team falling and cursing as they slipped and fell in the mud, and I could feel myself being pulled into that spiral of misery. And then something in me just clicked. I started to call the step, just quietly at first. Left, 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 right, left, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And then as the instructors moved away out of earshot, I got a little bit cheeky with it, slightly mocking one of our instructors. Left, 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 right, left, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. I heard a couple of giggles in my squad and voices joined mine as we started to call the step together. Now, the rope didn't get any lighter. The rain didn't stop. But suddenly we were no longer alone in our misery. We were moving together. The mood and the burden lifted a little. Together it felt easier. I didn't know it then, but 2 years later, I'd be facing a far greater challenge. At 19, my career was going well. I graduated top of my class. I was on track for promotion. Our ship was just returning from a long deployment back to its home base in Cairns. We were busy unpacking the ship when my name was called over the loudspeaker. I was to report to the bridge. I had a phone call. And my stomach just dropped. You see, my mum had been battling with breast cancer, and I knew she wasn't doing well. I had to force myself up those stairs, over to that telephone and lift it to my ear. It was my dad. He was crying. He said, "Mum's passed away." I just froze. My brain froze. I didn't hear anything else he said. My world shattered. And I walked down to my tiny, windowless cabin, thousands of kilometres from home, and I'd never felt more alone. Then there was this knock at the door. It was my boss's wife. I really didn't even know her that well. She just stepped inside and put her arms around me and held me while I sobbed. This beautiful connection and support from an almost stranger. She showed me that I wasn't alone in this most intense moment of grief. And I hope one day someone is there like that for my daughter when I die. I thought a lot about cheery things like this while I was alone in the wilderness in Tasmania, away from my family. I'd been offered the survival experience of a lifetime, alone Australia, but the timing was terrible. My daughter was just 6 months old. My partner Elsie was incredibly supportive, and she moved in with her parents while I was away. The west coast of Tasmania is one of the wettest places in the country. It was muddy, slippery, and oh so cold. Everything was uncomfortable out there. My lips split, my hands cracked. There was no flat ground at my site, so I was constantly struggling just to stand upright. And even trying to sit on a log, you'd slowly slide down the rotting wood. The hunger was constant. I'd spend hours foraging for native plants, maybe bringing back 10% of my normal daily intake. And out there in that environment with minimal calories, the cold settled deep in your bones. The weight loss impacted my ears, and the silence was broken by this loud drumming of my heartbeat in my ears, constantly, day and night. Boom, 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 boom. It led to what I can only really describe as an impending sense of doom. And I had to work really hard to catch those negative thoughts of, I'm not safe, I'm not safe. And I found I could do that by saying, I'm warm, I'm dry, I have a little bit of food, I can keep going, I'm okay. And it was really powerful to realise that not all thoughts and feelings are facts, and you do have some control over them. At night in the rainforest, the sun would set around 4:30 p.m. and the 15 hours of isolation and darkness stretched on endlessly. Around day 12 of being alone, I didn't want to be there anymore, but I also didn't want day 12 to be the end. So I told myself to keep going, just one day at a time. And that's when the learning began. So what happened? I built my own shelter and a bed out of sticks and moss to get myself up off the cold, wet ground. I meditated daily, sending love to every single human I could possibly think of. And I felt this really helped me to stop thinking about my own woes and start thinking about others and hoping that they were doing well. I foraged native plants to keep my energy and vitamins up. I found medicinal plants that I could use to treat cuts and scratches. I found soft, fluffy leaves that I could use as toilet paper. I even found wattle leaves that I could crush up to create soap. I also caught and cooked eels, boiling them to retain every last drop of eely, oily goodness. And I gagged down every last drop, much to the entertainment of people watching at home. I didn't know it until the show aired, but I was actually the first person to catch anything, giving my body a much-needed protein and fat boost. I was also my authentic self out there. I took a stance not to trap and kill possums and wallabies, as I'd spent a career as an environmental scientist looking after them, trying to protect them. And I also knew that the protein just wasn't worth the upset of killing my only companions out there. I ended up staying a total of 22 days alone, which was a massive personal achievement for me and was extremely hard won. Unbeknownst to me, 6 people had tapped out and left before me. People are often surprised I left when I did, and I'm often told, you could have won the show, which is incredibly kind, but I just couldn't I could not go on alone anymore. I didn't win the show or the money, but that didn't matter. I felt like the richest, happiest person on earth. I walked away with something far greater than prize money. I had gratitude for everything. Even a flat surface to stand on is simply divine. I had a new lens with which to view the world, one where every meal is precious. Laughing with friends and a hug from a loved one is simply divine. And holding my daughter and looking in my partner Elsie's eyes filled me with a rush of love, relief, and a sense of finally being home. And that first shower after 22 days in the bush was absolutely divine. And to this day, I have a piece of wood that I carved while I was out there that sits in my bathroom and it reminds me to have gratitude for warm running water. Those 22 days crystallised something in me that had been brewing since I was 17. The most important survival skill, it isn't grit, it isn't determination. The most important survival skill is the connection we have with other people. See, grit and determination will only get you so far. Everyone has a breaking point. And grit without a web of support and care is brittle at best. Alone, everything crumbles. True resilience is multi-layered. It comes from the connections we weave with the people surrounding us. Connection matters. And it's this web of care that makes us all stronger together. So whether you're stripped bare, alone in the wilderness, or in the middle of your own personal storm, whether literally or metaphorically, don't just push on alone. Stop. Look around you. Reach out. Ask for help. Because resilience isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing you never have to. Thank you.